Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is a Google Nexus 6, which is Google's latest smartphone made by Motorola. You can see the Motorola and the Nexus logos there on the back. And it's got a 6-inch 2560 by 1440 pixel high-resolution AMOLED display, Qualcomm Snapdragon 805 quad-core processor, 3 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs to 64 gigs of storage. It's the fastest phone that's been part of the Nexus program to date, and it's also the biggest and the most expensive. It has a 6-inch screen, sells for about $649 if you buy it unlocked. Now that 6-inch screen means that there are certain things that are a little bit hard to do unless you use two hands. It's really sort of a tablet-like device in that it really is going to be designed to sort of hold with one hand and operate with the other, unless you're doing something that you can do in the lower corner here. Now there are concessions to the large screen. The power and volume buttons are about almost halfway down the side here, and you can reach up and feel the power button thanks to the ridged texture on it. You can easily tell where it is without necessarily looking at it. And then below it is the volume rocker. There's micro USB cable or connector and headset nano SIM card. There's no SD card slot and there's no removable battery, but it does have a nice big 3200 milliamp hour battery. It lasts easily through a whole day. I've been using the phone from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, unplugged the whole time, and still having around 40% battery life left at the end of the day. And that's with maybe around 2 hours of screen on time. Now it's going to differ depending on how you're using the device, clearly. Long video watching or gaming sessions are going to run down the battery more quickly, but you get significantly more runtime, I would say, than you did with last year's Nexus 5, which has a smaller screen and also a smaller battery. Now, the Nexus 5 still has a couple of nice things going for it, even though it's not as fast, doesn't have as much memory, doesn't even have as high a resolution display, but it also is a lot easier to use with one hand. Now, as you can see, still can't quite reach all the way up to that corner, but I can reach a lot farther on the Nexus 5. Now, if you do need to charge the phone on the go, it comes with a Motorola turbocharger, which lets you get to around 6 to 8 hours of battery life from about 15 minutes of charging is what the official estimate is. I can say that definitely it charges much, much faster if you use the official included charger than if you use a third-party charger. Now, this is one of the first devices to ship with Android 5.0 Lollipop, and I'll show you that in a moment. But let's take a quick look at some of the features first. You notice as I pick it up, you automatically see some notifications here. That's something called ambient display. It won't be available on all devices, but it is available on the Nexus 6. And in addition to showing you notifications when you leave the phone still for a second and pick it up, when new notifications come in, it'll also show those. So you can tap the screen, unlock it, and interact with those notifications if you like. Now, if you get a lot of emails, and I do get a lot of email as a professional blogger, it can get kind of annoying because your screen might be sort of flashing on all the time, all throughout the day when you've got ambient display turned on. But it's a nice feature to have if you're somebody who just wants to make sure that you don't miss something when it's sitting on the table next to you. Something else that not all devices will have, but it is built into Android 5.0 for devices with supported hardware, is support for basically, even with the screen off, asking your phone questions or searching the web or so forth. You can start text messages and other things using just your voice. Okay, Google, what's the temperature in Philadelphia?
It's 70 degrees in Philadelphia right now.
Okay, Google, what time is it in Hong Kong? Didn't tell me out loud, but it did bring up the time here on the screen. Having a hard time showing that on the camera. So as I said, we're running Android 5.0, and so that means we have the new notification area here. We've got the new recents menu, support for material design, and some other changes. You can find more details about what's new in Android 5.0 in another video on my YouTube channel or at liliputing.com. In terms of this display, we've got this nice big bright display. I've actually dimmed it a little bit so it'll show on camera, but it's great for reading, watching videos, playing games.
Their regular Android apps TV friendly. Instance that I went ahead and sideloaded the Amazon MP3 store.
And as I mentioned, we also have
lets me listen to music.
Those stereo front-facing speakers that sound pretty great most of the time. They're loud enough that where with my Nexus 5, I found myself pairing a Bluetooth speaker to listen to the radio in the morning while I cook breakfast. I don't need to do that. I can just use these built-in speakers. Now, the Bluetooth speaker does sound a little bit better for music, but for things like talk radio or National Public Radio and whatnot, I think that these speakers are more than adequate. So we've got better battery life, better speakers, faster processor, in a lot of ways, it is a step up from last year's phone. The only real question is, do you want a big phone that costs so much more? Google's continuing to sell the Nexus 5 for about $350, whereas this sells for $650 for the unlocked model. So I personally am not sure that I'm going to switch right away, but I can definitely see how if you're in the market for a new phone and you want a big screen phone, something like the Nexus 6 would be attractive. As I mentioned, it does have a speedy processor, it does a great job with games. Although I think I'm turned around in this one. There we go, got a zombie coming. But to be honest, most Android games are designed for phones that don't have super speedy processors. So games like Dead Trigger or Riptide or others might take advantage of some of the higher-end graphics processing power and CPU processing power of some phones, but really, even if you have a slower phone or a smaller phone or an older phone, they're going to run just fine. Where I think that extra RAM and processing speed comes into play is that the phone's a little bit more future-proof, and it does a great job with multitasking. Let's see what else is new. If you're using the Chrome web browser, Chrome tabs will actually show up in the Recents menu as individual entries. Personally, I like to use the Firefox web browser, which works pretty much the same on Android 5.0 as it does on Android 4.4, in that you can manage everything from within the app itself. Animations are pretty smooth, Google Now works nicely, and overall, it's been a lot of fun testing this phone over the last week or two. It gets strong performance, long battery life, and in, like I said, almost every way it's better than the Nexus 5. I just am not convinced that I want a 6-inch phone. So that's the sort of decision that I think you're going to have to make on how much do you want the new technology, and how much would you rather have something that's easier to fit into a pocket. I found, for instance, that while I can slide this into my jeans pocket, and I don't wear particularly skinny jeans, it does sometimes sort of bite into my leg when I'm sitting down. So there are some disadvantages to having a big screen phone, I think. But, you know, there are advantages too, like that extra space for a battery. The camera is also a huge upgrade from last year's model. 13 megapixels, as I mentioned, 2 megapixel camera on the front. It's okay for selfies, but it takes really pretty nice pictures, I think, with the rear camera using Google software. There's a HDR high dynamic range mode for getting great colors. And, you know, it's not going to replace a professional SLR style camera, but it is definitely a step up for point and shoot over what we were getting on previous Nexus devices. So I don't review a lot of smartphones at littleputing.com, but I have used most of the Nexus phones, and this is definitely a big step up from all of the previous models in every way except for pocketability. So that is a quick video review. You can find more details at littleputing.com and at this YouTube channel for more information about Android 5.0 and other recent devices. This is Brad Linder with Lilliputiting, and a quick video review of the Google Nexus 6, which was loaned to me by Google.